Welcome back. Today we're going to tie a Flashback Pheasant Tail. This is one of the patterns that I fished a ton. Probably the pattern that I fished the most growing up. It's just flat out effective. I mean, it's a near perfect imitation for most any Mayfly nymph. The flash, you get your bright days, you get that little bit extra reflection. Sometimes that can be a trigger, sometimes you pick up more fish. Wouldn't really recommend using it much on cloudy days, more so on the sunny days is when I would be using that. Or when you're starting to get a pretty good emergence of adults on the water. As they're starting to come through the water column, you'll have a little bit of sheen on some of the naturals. So what we're going to do here is tie the Flashback Pheasant Tail. To start, I'm going to do this one in a size 12 today. I tied these 12 all the way down to 20, really. I would say 14 to 18 would be the sizes that I tied the majority of and fished the most. 12s, maybe for some of your, slate drakes, but even at those, I mean, those get a specialized nymph because they have that white line on the top. Your ISO nymphs wind up getting a little more specialized. Then the gills are a little more pronounced as well. So use some different materials for that. I mean, this would work, but the ISO nymph, we'll do another one of those here before too long. It's going to be a better representation. You'll catch more fish. But the 12, I mean, some of your March Browns can get a little bit bigger. You'll have some Mayflies that are going to be in that 12 size. But for the majority of them, I think 14 to 18 is a pretty safe bet. Let's see. To start on this one, we're going to take some pheasant tail fibers. Probably close to a half dozen here. And we're going to tie these in. Now what we've got is my reference point on this for where I'm stopping my thread, starting my tail. As always with these bent hooks, I just take the imaginary line straight back, and that's where I'm going to be starting my tying with. This is on a Daiichi 1120. It's a size 12, like I was saying. It's a curved caddis, scud hook, however you want to call it. What I'm going to do on this to measure this out is I'm going to take the length. I'm going to draw a line up from the barb of my hook. That's going to be the length that I'm taking, starting at the eye. And that's the length that I want this tail to be. So we're just going to get this tied in. I'm not worrying too much about covering all of this stuff up. The main thing that I want is my tail in right now. I used to, when I was tying these, just take this and wrap it back. What I found that you wind up catching a couple of gaps, whatever it may be, and you have to be a little bit more precise, so I just get rid of that. I mean, it's not going to really cost you a whole lot of extra time, and it makes the fly a little bit cleaner, I feel. So what I'll wind up doing is just retying that in, or retying a separate portion of it in. So now I'm going to go with some small brass wire and get a little bit more of this here. This is going to be, 4 to 6 inches, somewhere about that. Just make sure, don't short yourself, give yourself a decent amount to work with. And actually, let me see here. I'm going to tie in my pheasant tail first. Started getting a little bit ahead of myself there. So I'm going to tie this in from the tip. Same thing, I'm taking probably about a half a dozen pieces. And I'm just going to square that up on the tips. I'm going to work this forward here to about my halfway point. I had one disappear on me there. So we'll just take that back to where we left off with our tail. And then same thing with our wire. We're going to advance back to where we tied that in. And we're going to get our wire tied in. I'm just going to take a little bit of this and turn it around. Get myself a little hook right there. And there we go. Now I'm going to take and start wrapping the body material. Just going one wrap right in front of the next tier. Try not to block too much of that with my hands. And I want to work this right to about there. I'm going to use probably 2/3 of this. I'm going to have body. Some of that I'm going to cover up a little bit with my wing case and the abdomen. But for a reference, we're going to have about 2/3 of that. So now all I'm doing is I'm taking my small copper wire and I'm just going to make some counter wraps on this. You can omit this step altogether if you want. I really don't see the flash doing a whole lot on the wire. The main reason that I like tying this in is durability. You know, these fibers right here, the pheasant tail fibers themselves, when they're wrapped, they're pretty fragile and they'll go busting up on you. You get a tooth or something in there, banging off a few rocks, whatever it may be. It'll wind up it'll wind up unraveling on you and you'll lose your fly. This will add a little bit of durability to it. So I tend to do that. Now I'm just going to cover this up. I'm going to have a little thread base there. And you've got a ton of options, really. This is what I go with, is this Mirage tinsel. This is a UTC product. I just like it because it's nice and even. The reflective value is great. But I don't have to worry about cutting. It used to be I would have the just the sheets that you unravel and they're folded and you have to worry about cutting them and, you know, making those look right and everything and making sure that, you know, it's consistent throughout. This is easy. It's on a spool. You peel a section of it off, you tie it on there and you're good to go. The only time it can get a little bit messy is when you do it like that. All that stuff that's crinkled up. So you wind up having a little bit of drop there, but not a big deal. So, being that this is a size 12, I'm going to use the large. Anything smaller than a 12, I would be using the medium or even small. But we'll get those two out of the way so they're not distracting. Now I'm going to get this tied in, and the biggest thing with this when you're tying this in is making sure, and I'll show it better once I have it tied in, that your tinsel is going right in line. You don't want it kicked off to one side or the other. You'll wind up having a crease in your back side. So take your time with this. Get a loose wrap or two, and I need to spin that thread some. There we go. Let me see if I'm going to like that or not. I don't think so. Nope. I don't like it. We'll try it again. There we go, that looks better. I just had to get a better angle with that. Now, before you go calling that good, just double check it, make sure that it's going to be at the length you want it, and also make sure that it's running straight back your hook. So I'm happy with that length right there. I'm happy with the tie-in point. Everything looks clean. Let me get one more wrap right there. Yeah, everything looks pretty clean. I'm happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is tie in the leg portion. After a while, I started skipping this section. I didn't really find it necessary, but it does add a little bit of extra realism to the fly. It kind of gives you some legs. I mean, this is how the original was done. The majority of the ones that you see nowadays, especially with the Euro nymphing and everything being so predominant and popular, really, I've never really gotten into it much. I experimented with it a little bit. I tried it. Wasn't too crazy about it. I just go straight tight lining, but whatever. I mean, we're splitting hairs at this point. But a lot of those guys go with the real slender, like very minimalist patterns, mainly a bunch of thread and they'll color some stuff up, maybe some beads. I don't use beads much anymore these days. Every once in a while I'll do a couple bead-headed patterns, but not very often. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm just taking this back. It's a little bit short of the length of my tail. That's the measuring point that I have for this. And then I'm going to trim this off. I still have a nice clean section there for the head. I'm just going to clean that up a little bit with some thread wraps. And I should have taken my contacts out because I can't see a dang thing. Now what I'm going to do is just take 2 strands of Peacock Herl here, and I'm going to tie these in and just give a couple of wraps right up to the front. I'm going to stop that just short, making sure that I have plenty of room, that I'm not going to crowd that eye, because I still have 2 materials that I want to tie off here, and I got to form my legs. Make sure that you give yourself enough room to work with. And when you're working on these curved hooks, it's always a good idea to just go ahead and throw in a half hitch or get a quick whip finish in there, just some sort of knot, because if you're just sitting here and say you've got a camera in your room and you're setting up talking to it or whatever it may be, and you tend to talk with your hands a lot, you hit this and next thing you know your thread unravels 2 or 3 spots, and then your peacock curls all over the place. So just a good tip right there. Save you a little bit of frustration. So now I'm going to get that tied in right how I want it and hook that around so it's not going to fly off while I sit here and explain the rest of this, what I'm going to do. You have 2 different options on this one. You can tie your legs back right now, or you can bring your flash over the top. I like doing it with the flash over the top and then getting my legs how I want them. So what I'm going to do is just the exact same thing I just did. I'm going to capture my flash now. I'm just going to get 1 or 2 wraps in there. And I'm tying away from myself, so it's a little difficult. Make sure that my flash is going the direction that I want there, that I'm following the hook. I'm not kicked off to one side or the other. And then I'm going gonna throw that off to the side there. Hope that I'm not cutting anything important there because everything's fuzzy. And that looks pretty good. I'm gonna block this back camera while I clean up that with a couple of thread wraps. I'm gonna bring my legs around now, and I'm just gonna peel half of them back my side. I'm gonna get another half on the opposite side, and then just a couple of clean thread wraps through there. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna call that good. Now I still have a good clean head right there. I could have done a little bit better of a job. I got 1 or 2 little fibers sitting in there, but for the most part, everything's good and clean. Everything looks good. I'm going to throw a couple more wraps in there. Peel that stuff out of my way. And then I'm going to grab some head cement. Just touch that up. Grab my bodkin. Just move that stuff around slightly. Make sure that I still have a nice clean eye to work with. Everything's good. There is your Flashback Pheasant Tail Nymph. Like I said, one of my favorite patterns growing up. I probably caught more fish on the Pheasant Tail Platform, whether it be a flashback, a bead head, whatever it may be. I've probably caught more fish on that platform, on that, than any other fly that I've ever fished. I mean, this thing was it was deadly. It really was back home. But so many other different patterns to fish and tie. You know, it kind of gets boring doing the same thing over and over. And I mean, it doesn't really allow you to branch out. But for just getting started, teaching a kid to fish, teaching a kid to tie, whatever it may be, this is a great way to go, and what I would definitely recommend doing. It keeps them interested because it's going to catch fish, and teaches you the basics on tying, which goes a long way into building into, you know, the more complex, the different techniques. But this is one where it teaches you your tapers, a little bit of everything in this pattern. Like I said, it's easy. You can tie just a pile of them with a couple of these and some Peacock Herl, really. But thanks for taking a trip back in time with me there. Don't tie too many of these days. Hopefully I didn't screw anything up too awful bad. But as always, thanks guys for watching. If you have questions or comments, leave them with me. I'll get back to you, but we will catch you next Wednesday. We're going to go into a bigger pattern again. A lot bigger. See you next Wednesday.